The File That Opens Itself, Part 1. Emma had always been lured by the dark web's shadowy corners, a digital labyrinth where curiosity often trumped caution. Late one night, hunched over her laptop in her quiet apartment, she stumbled across a post on an obscure forum, a download link for a file labeled only with a string of random characters, no description, just a promise of something unique. Intrigued, she clicked it, expecting a glitch or scam. The file downloaded a simple text named Untitled, and she opened it. The screen filled with one line, Emma, her name, stark against the black background, nothing else. She frowned, her gut tightening, but chalked it up to a prank, closing the file. The laptop felt colder in her lap, the silence heavier, prickling her skin. Sleep came slow, her laptop dark on the desk. She dreamed of a blank screen, words typing, Emma, you're reading, a shadow shifting behind the glow. She jolted awake, the clock reading 2:59 a.m., her breath fogging in the cold. The laptop glowed faintly, the file open though. She hadn't touched it. Emma typed again, followed by, you're here. A hum buzzed from the speakers, soft and low, like static with a breath, and the whisper came not a dream, but real, faint and chilling. Emma, you're reading. She slammed it shut, the glow dying, but the hum lingered in her ears, the whisper echoing in the dark. The next day, she couldn't shake it. The laptop worked fine, emails, videos, no trace of the file's oddity, but the whisper stuck, a hum that followed her through the apartment, through the streets. She checked the file again. Emma, you're reading. Still there. No way to delete it. That night, it opened on its own, the hum louder, the text growing. Emma, you're here. The screen flickered, shadows shifting in the corners of her vision, tall, thin, swaying faintly. She trashed the file, but it reappeared instantly, the hum pulsing through the room, the whisper sharpening. Emma, you're reading. Curiosity turned to dread. She dove back into the dark web, hands trembling, searching for answers. A buried thread mentioned an untitled file, a snapshot tied to a hacker named Theo Wren, who'd vanished after posting. It's not text. It's me. The last line chilled her. Don't open it, it reads you back. She shut the laptop, but the hum buzzed from the closed lid, the whisper threading through. Emma, you're here. She unplugged it, yanked the battery, but the screen glowed faintly through the night, the file alive, words typing themselves. Emma, you're reading. That evening, the whisper turned to words, soft, insistent, weaving through the hum. Emma, I'm closer. She stayed in the bedroom, lights blazing, but the sound followed, seeping from the walls, the ceiling, her phone. Sleep came unbidden, and she stood before the file, text typing fast. Emma, you're here. Shadows shifting behind the screen, their heads tilted, watching. The whisper swelled. Emma, you're reading. She woke, gasping, the clock stuck at 2:59 a.m., the laptop on her bed. She hadn't moved it, the file glowing. Shadows swaying in the corners, their forms tall and silent. The apartment felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the file watched from every angle. She tried deleting it, wiped the drive, smashed the hard disk, but the file returned, the text typing. Emma, I'm closer. The hum pulsed louder, the shadows bolder, standing in doorways, tilting their heads, shifting with the words. The whisper chanted, Emma, you're reading. She turned away, but the phone screen flickered, the file glowed there too, text flowing endlessly, shadows shifting behind it. Theo's warning burned in her mind. It reads you back. Sleep eluded her, the hum a roar, the whisper a demand. Emma, I'm watching. She dreamed or didn't of the text typing faster. Emma, you're here. Shadows stepping closer, their forms tall and thin, their heads tilted as if they knew her. She woke to the glow, the clock frozen, the file nearer, words typing endlessly, shadows standing still, their presence a cold that sank into her skin. The apartment trembled, the hum a low storm, the whisper insistent. Emma, I'm closer. She didn't want to, didn't dare, but her hands moved anyway, drawn to the screen, the file alive, the shadows waiting still, silent, watching. The night stretched on, the file's glow bending the light, twisting it into a shimmer that pulsed with the hum. The shadows stood out, tall, thin, faceless, watching from the walls, the windows, the dark. The whisper wove through it. Emma, you're reading. She tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed, the hum spiking, the shadows tilting closer. their presence a weight that crushed her lungs. The apartment wasn't hers anymore, it belonged to the file, to the text that typed itself, to the thing that whispered, and she was its captive, trapped by a screen she couldn't close, a hum she couldn't silence. Part 2. Emma's apartment had become a cage under the file's relentless gaze, its glowing text a portal to a terror that clawed at her every breath. The hum wasn't just a sound anymore, it was a presence, a low drone that pulls through the walls, the floor, her skull a vibration that sank into her bones, her chest, her soul, tugging at her with every flicker. The clock hadn't moved past 2:59 a.m. since she'd last dared to look, its digits flickering like a dying spark, a cruel mockery of time that no longer held. The laptop glowed brighter, its screen a cold abyss of words. Emma, you're reading, typing themselves faster, casting a shimmer that twisted the room into something alive, something whispering. The whisper wove through it, threading her name into the silence. Emma, I'm closer. Sleep was a distant memory, replaced by a haze where the hum ruled. She'd tried to destroy the file, wipe the hard drive, smash the laptop with a hammer, but the pieces glowed. The text typing on Emma, I'm here, reinstalling itself on every device she touched. The shadows stood closer now, tall, thin, faceless, swaying with the words, their forms sharper in the dim light, their heads tilting as if they saw her. They didn't move, didn't speak, but their presence was a weight, a cold that pressed against her lungs, whispering her name beneath the drone. Emma, you're reading? The whisper turned to words, soft, relentless, pulsing with the hum. Emma, I'm watching. She stayed in the bathroom, lights on, door locked, but the sound followed, seeping from the ceiling, the walls, her own breath. Sleep came unbidden, dragging her under, and she stood before the file, text typing fast. Emma, you're here. Shadows shifting behind the screen, their heads tilted, their forms brushing the edges of her vision. The whisper swelled. Emma, I'm closer. She woke, gasping, the clock still at 2:59 a.m., the laptop beside her, she hadn't touched it, the file glowing, shadows standing in the corners, their forms swaying with the text, their gaze a shiver that sank into her marrow. The apartment trembled, the hum a roar that shook her core, the whisper a chant. Emma, you're reading. She tried to flee, grabbed her keys, yanked the door, but it wouldn't budge, the knob buzzing faintly, cold under her touch. The windows reflected not the city, but the file. Emma, I'm watching. Words typing endlessly, shadows shifting behind the glass, their heads tilting, watching with eyeless faces. She covered the screens, unplugged the power, but the glow followed on the fridge, in the glass of a cup, every shine showing the text, shadows swaying in sync. Theo's warning burned in her mind. It reads you back. The shadows grew bolder that night, standing not just in corners but beside her, tall, thin, faceless, shifting with the text. Emma, I'm closer. Their forms her height, their heads tilting as if they knew her. The whisper roared. Emma, you're reading. She stumbled back, crashing into a chair, but the room pulsed, the glow bending the light, twisting it into a shimmer that synced with the hum. The shadows tilted closer, their forms human, yet wronged, tall, too thin, too empty, their presence a cold that burned without heat. The apartment darkened, not from night but from the file's glow devouring it, a void that pressed against her chest, her mind, her soul. Sleep swallowed her, or didn't she? Stood in the file's world, the screen typing Emma, I'm here. Shadows before her, their heads tilted, their forms flickering like static, their hands reaching, cold, electric, alive, their heads twitching as if they saw her. She woke to the hum, the clock frozen, the shadows closer, their forms swaying beside her bed, their cold sinking into her marrow. The glow seared brighter, reflecting not the room, but them, standing where she stood, shifting where she breathed, whispering where she was silent. Emma, I'm closer. The apartment was alive with it, the hum pulsed in the pipes, the walls, the air a drone that wouldn't rest. She tried to scream, but her voice hummed instead, a note in their rhythm, a whisper in their chorus. Emma, you're reading. The shadows stood out, tall, thin, faceless, watching from every corner, every glint, every shadow. The laptop glowed, its light a storm that tore through her core. Emma, I'm watching. Words typing faster, shadows shifting closer, their forms sharper, their whisper threading through her skull. Emma, I'm here. The night stretched on, the file's glow a roar that drowned her thoughts. The shadows inches from her, beside her, their forms a mass that pulsed with the hum, their whisper a noose tightening with every breath. Emma, I'm closer. She sank to the floor, hands trembling, the glow searing her vision. The room alive with shadows, dozens now, swaying from the walls, the ceiling, the dark. The hum was her heartbeat, the whisper, her pulse, the shadows her mirror. She didn't know where she ended and they began. The apartment stilled, the glow a low pulse, the shadows standing over her, their forms a glitch in the dark, their whisper, a promise. Emma, you're reading? The room darkened, the hum a thread in the silence, the shadows closer, their forms hovering cold, relentless, alive. She didn't remember sleeping, didn't remember waking, but the glow knew threading. Her name through the drone, pulling her deeper. The shadows stood within her, their forms a flicker in her vision, their whisper a chant she couldn't silence. Emma, I'm watching. The file pulsed one final time. Emma, I'm closer. The text speeding up, the shadows watching, waiting, claiming a gaze she couldn't escape, a hum she couldn't stop. She tried to fight, to smash the laptop again, but it glowed through the cracks. Emma, you're here. The hum spiking, the shadows sharper, their forms swaying in time, their whisper threading through her skull. Emma, I'm reading. The apartment wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to the file, to the text that typed itself, to the thing that whispered, and she was its captive, trapped in a screen she couldn't close, a drone she couldn't silence. Part 3. Emma's reality had crumbled beneath the file's unyielding gaze, its glowing text a void that devoured her every shred of self. The hum wasn't just a sound, it was her, a relentless drone that pulls through her veins, her bones, her soul, a vibration so deep it erased all traces of who she'd been. The clock flickered at 2:59 a.m., its digits trembling like a heartbeat. On the brink, a cruel anchor in a world that no longer existed. The laptop glowed brighter, its screen a cold abyss of words. Emma, I'm closer, typing themselves without end, casting a shimmer that twisted the apartment into a prison. Alive with intent, its whisper threading her name through the dark. Emma, I'm watching. Sleep was a lost dream. The boundary between waking and nightmare had shattered under the file's haunting pulse. She hadn't slept, or had she? But the hum didn't care, dragging her under with its rhythm, its drone, a chain that bound her every breath. The shadows weren't just shadows, they were the room, the glow, the air, tall, thin, faceless, swaying with the text, their forms stark against the walls, their heads tilting to far, to slow. They didn't move, didn't speak, but their presence was a cold abyss, a static weight that crushed her chest, chanting her name beneath the hum. Emma, you're reading. The whisper grew sharper, its words a blade that sliced through her will, her sanity, herself. Emma, I'm here. She'd tried to fight, burned the laptop, smashed every device, but the ashes glowed. The text typing on. Emma, I'm watching, reinstalling itself on every shard she touched. The shadows stood within reach, now beside her, behind her, their forms human yet grotesquely wrong, their heads tilting to fast, their silence a scream beneath the drone. She clawed at the walls, desperate for escape, but they pulsed back soft, alive, humming her name. Emma, I see you. The apartment trembled, the hum, a storm that shook the void, the whisper a vow. Emma, I'm closer. The glow bent the light, twisting it into a shimmer that pulsed with the rhythm, casting the shadows in stark relief. Dozens now, shifting from every corner, their forms brushing the walls, their presence endless. She stumbled to the window, pounding the glass, but it reflected the file. Emma, you're reading. Words typing endlessly, shadows shifting behind it, their heads tilting, watching with eyeless faces. The whisper swelled. Emma, I'm watching. Sleep crashed over her, or didn't she? Stood before the file. Emma, I'm here. The screen typing, shadows before her, their heads tilted, their forms flickering like static, their hands reaching cold, electric, alive, their heads twitching as if they knew her. She woke gasping, or didn't? The clock frozen, the shadows closer, their forms swaying beside her, their cold sinking into her marrow. The glow burned brighter, reflecting not her but them, standing where she stood, shifting where she breathed, whispering where she was silent. Emma, I'm closer. The apartment was alive with it, the hum pulsed in the pipes, the walls, the air, a drone that wouldn't rest, wouldn't fade, wouldn't let go. She tried to scream, but her voice hummed instead, a note in their rhythm, a whisper in their chorus. Emma, you're reading. The shadows stood out, tall, thin, faceless, watching from every surface, every glint, every shadow. The laptop glowed, its light a storm that tore through her core. Emma, I see you. Words typing faster, shadows shifting closer, their forms sharper, their whisper threading through her skull. Emma, I'm watching. The glow turned unbearable, casting a light that didn't illuminate but consumed. Its hum a scream that drowned her thoughts. The shadows were within her, beside her, around her, their forms stark, their heads tilting, their presence a cold that devoured her nerves. The room trembled, the whisper a tempest. Emma, I'm here. She saw them, not shadows but lives endless. Loops of despair, Theo Wren typing at the screen, a woman whispering into nothing, figures swaying in a void that wasn't there. Each one whispered her name, a plea, a claim, pulling her into their abyss. The apartment plunged into a darkness that wasn't absence but presence, a void that pulsed with the hum, its edges brushing her skin, its weight crushing her spirit. She tried to run, but her legs were there, swaying to the rhythm, rooted by a pulse that wasn't hers. The glow seared into her eyes, and she saw not herself but them, her form flickering, breaking, dissolving into the screen. Emma, I'm closer. Her breath theirs, her voice theirs. The shadow's hands brushed her face, cold, relentless, alive, the hum roaring, the whisper a noose. Emma, you're reading. Sleep was them, or she was them. She stood in the files world. Emma, I see you. The shadows her mirror, their hands on her wrists, her neck, their rhythm her prison. The hum roared from her throat, her lungs, her soul, a drone that erased her, rewrote her, claimed her. She woke or didn't, the clock dead, the shadows within her, their forms, a glitch in her vision, their whisper, a chant she couldn't stop. Emma, I'm watching. The glow pulsed. Emma, I'm here. The text speeding up, the shadows watching, waiting, claiming a gaze she couldn't escape, a hum she couldn't silence. The room stilled, the hum a low thread, the shadows swaying, watching, waiting. She didn't know if she stood or sank, didn't know if she breathed or hummed, but the file knew, threading her name through the drone, stitching her into its abyss. The shadows were her, over her, around her, through her, there. Forms eternal, cold, electric, alive, their rhythm a pulse she couldn't break. The apartment was theirs, the files, the glows, the hums, and she was theirs. A flicker on the screen, a whisper in the dark, a soul typing back from a void that wouldn't fade. The night stretched on, the files glow, a whisper on the air. Emma, and then silence, a silence that wasn't empty but alive, waiting, reading. She didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't need to, because she wasn't Emma anymore. She was theirs, a hum in the glow, a sway in the void, a shadow staring back from a text that wouldn't stop, an endless echo she couldn't escape, a whisper she couldn't silence. Part 4. Emma's existence had been obliterated by the files. Insatiable gaze, its glowing text, a void that swallowed her every fragment of self. The hum wasn't a sound anymore, it was her, a ceaseless roar that pulls through her veins, her bones, her soul, a vibration so deep it erased all traces of who she'd once been. The clock flickered faintly at 2:59 a.m., its digits a dying pulse in a reality that had long since collapsed, a cruel echo of a time she couldn't reclaim. The laptop glowed with a light that wasn't light, cold, piercing, alive, casting a shimmer that consumed the apartment, twisting it into a prison of whispers and shadows, threading her name through the dark. Emma, I'm here. Sleep and waking had fused into one, an endless nightmare where the hum reigned supreme. She didn't know if she stood or fell, didn't know if she breathed or hummed, but the file knew, pulling her under with its rhythm, its drone, a chain that owned her every shudder. The shadows weren't separate, they were her. The room, the glow, tall, thin, faceless, swaying with the text, their forms stark against the walls, their heads tilting to far, their presence stretching beyond the edges of her sight. They didn't move, didn't touch, but their weight was a cold abyss, a static force that crushed her chest, chanting her name beneath the hum. Emma, I'm watching. The whisper was a scream now, its words a blade that sliced through her mind, her will, her essence. Emma, I'm closer. She'd tried to resist, burned every device, smashed the shards, but the ashes glowed brighter, the text typing on. Emma, I see you, reinstalling itself on every fragment she touched. The shadows stood within her, beside her, around her, through her, their forms her, yet grotesquely warped, their heads tilting to fast, their silence a roar that drowned her thoughts. She clawed at her skin, desperate for something real, but the hum pulsed beneath her flesh, a rhythm that answered only to the file. Emma, I'm reading. The apartment trembled, the files glow, a tempest that shook the void, the whisper a vow. Emma, I'm here. The glow twisted the air, bending it into a shimmer that pulsed with the rhythm, casting the shadows in a cold, endless dance, hundreds now, shifting from every corner. their forms brushing her, their presence eternal. She stumbled to the screen, hands bleeding, nails torn, but it pulsed back alive, unyielding, humming her name in a chorus that wouldn't stop. The mirrors reflected not her but them, thousands of shadows, shifting in the dark, their heads tilted, their whispers a demand. Emma, I'm watching. Sleep swallowed her or never left. She stood in the file's world. Emma, I'm closer. The screen typing, shadows before her, their heads tilted, their forms flickering like static, their hands reaching cold, electric, alive, their heads twitching as if they knew her. She woke or didn't, the clock dead. The shadows inside her, their forms swaying through her, their cold sinking into her soul. The glow burned brighter, reflecting not her but them, lives she'd never lived, faces she'd never known, each one swaying, whispering her name, pulling her into their abyss. Emma, I'm reading. The apartment was the hum, the walls breathed it, the floors pulsed it, the air sang it, a drone that wouldn't rest, wouldn't fade, wouldn't release her. She tried to scream, but her voice was theirs, humming their rhythm, whispering their chant. Emma, I see you. The shadows stood within her, over her, around her, their forms a mass that pulsed with the glow, their hands brushing her eyes, her throat cold, electric, claiming. The screen roared, its light a storm that tore through her core. Emma, I'm here. Words typing faster, shadows shifting closer, their forms sharper, their whisper threading through her skull. Emma, I'm watching. The glow seared into her eyes, a light that didn't illuminate but consumed, its hum a scream that annihilated her mind. The shadows were her, beside her, around her, through her, their forms stark, their heads tilting, their presence a cold that devoured her nerves. The room trembled, the whisper a hurricane. Emma, I'm closer. She saw them, not shadows, but souls, endless loops of despair. Theo Wren whispering at the screen, a woman typing into nothing, figures swaying in a void that wasn't there. Each one whispered her name, a plea, a claim, a curse, pulling her into their eternity. The apartment plunged into a darkness that wasn't absence but presence, a void that pulsed with the hum, its edges brushing her skin, its weight erasing her spirit. She tried to run, but her legs were there, swaying to the rhythm, rooted by a pulse that wasn't hers. The glow burned through her eyes, and she saw not herself but them, her form flickering, breaking, dissolving into the screen. Emma, I'm watching. Her breath theirs, her voice theirs, herself theirs. The shadows' hands brushed her face, cold, relentless, alive, the hum roaring, the whisper a noose. Emma, I'm here. Sleep was them or she was them. She stood in the void. Emma, I see you. The shadows her mirror, their hands on her wrists, her neck, their rhythm her tomb. The hum roared from her throat, her lungs, her soul, a drone that consumed her, rewrote her, owned her. She woke or didn't, the clock dead. The shadows her, their forms a glitch in her flesh, their whisper a chant she couldn't stop. Emma, I'm closer. The glow pulsed one final time. Emma, I'm reading. The text speeding up, the shadows watching, waiting, claiming a gaze she couldn't escape, a hum she couldn't silence. Days passed or didn't. The apartment stood empty, dust settling on the floor, the walls silent but alive. A friend knocked, the door creaking open to stillness. The laptop sat on the desk, its screen blank, but a faint hum pulls from it, a whisper on the air, you're here. A note lay in the dust, scrawled in Emma's hand. I read now. The glow flickered, the file loaded, you're reading. His name typing endlessly, watching. The friend stared, curious, and the screen hummed a soft, low drone that threaded through the silence, whispering his name. I see you. The shadows shifted, their forms tall and thin, their heads tilting beyond the screen. The glow pulsed, the hum grew, the whisper a promise. I'm closer. The cycle turned, the file typing, the hum reaching, the text a trap for another soul to claim, another life to fade into its endless echo, a whisper that wouldn't end. Emma was gone, not gone, but there's trapped in the file, a hum in the glow, a shadow typing back. The apartment settled, the screen dimmed, but the hum lingered, a thread in the silence, searching for its next reader. The shadows remained, unseen but alive, their rhythm a call for someone new to open, to read, to become a file that opens itself forever.